HR Expo Africa, HREA Summit. This year's theme is the art of employee engagement.
So I think what I'll do is first start by asking who is an engaged employee. And I mean, I know you've had a lot of sessions today, both from the opening session yesterday and all through today. Now, when we talk about employee engagement, there are different definitions, different descriptions, but I think what I would like to do is go through what an employee, physically or emotionally represents. So typically, an engaged employee has a high sense of responsibility and accountability. It goes the extra mile, takes personal satisfaction in the quality of their own work. They don't need anyone else to tell them what to do. They're interested, they're involved. They also actively support their colleagues and they are willing to learn. I'm sure as I'm describing, pictures of, some of your colleagues are coming to mind. You say, oh, okay, that sounds like person X or person Y. But I do hope that you can find yourself in some of these descriptions. And it's not just about, other people that you can think about. Now, many studies have gone on, people have done tons and tons of research and found significant correlation between employee engagement and company's performance. So it's not in doubt that if you have highly engaged employees, you will have improved company performance. And if you have, a bunch of employees who are not engaged, your performance will slightly, start to dip. So I'm not going to spend too much time, trying to explain who an engaged employee is. Now, in terms of the components of engagement, we typically would look at three components. The physical dimension, which is the energetic and the passion that you tend to, see when you talk to employees. There's the emotional dimension as well, which is that unspoken bit, it's innate. It's inside, the person, and they are able to express it, as well as the cognitive, which is what you feel, when you're talking to them. So there was also a need to differentiate between employee satisfaction and employee engagement. Because a lot of times we do surveys, we try and we say, oh, we have 70% of our employees are satisfied. Now, when you talk about satisfaction, is that I am happy with what it is that I get in my pocket. So you can be satisfied but not engaged. It's very important. You can be what? Satisfied but not engaged. You're looking puzzled. Okay. So when we talk about the engagement is that deeper feeling, deeper connection, where you're willing to go over and beyond for your organization. It's, in layman terms, almost like being in love with your organization. And you can look at satisfaction as liking. So you see that there's a gap. The engagement is the deeper extension of the satisfaction. But it is important to measure satisfaction because that already tells you, are you even touching the people at all? So it's not in itself a bad thing to measure satisfaction, but I think we need to focus more on engagement. Now, in terms of the reward landscape, there's been different things that are happening and changing what we know about reward. And I want to put a caveat on this point. Usually when we talk about reward and some of the practices, we think they're not happening in Nigeria, and that is for the Oyibo people. The interesting thing is that Nigeria is a very complex and peculiar society. When you're on LinkedIn and you see something has been launched and everybody's applauding it, in the next 2 days, you can be sure you will see it somewhere in Nigeria. How it happens, I don't know. So we live in a land of extremists. We have extreme poverty, extreme hunger, and extreme wealth and, lao. It's Nigeria. So you then have employees who are in this mix. And the question is, how do we motivate and retain employees to continue to perform? Because they are living in this complex mix of extreme wants and extreme, availability. How do they, improve in this environment. So in terms of things that are impacting reward, we have the whole thing about automation and artificial intelligence. A lot of us in some organizations already have bots. Our help desk are being overtaken by systems now that, do the first level call resolution for us. We all know about IVRs. When you call your bank, press 1, press 2. You haven't spoken to anybody. How many times have you resolved a query by yourself on, one of those call things on the bank, and you haven't spoken to anybody, but you're done? And that is happening, a lot more. Flexible work environment. So people working from different places. Flexible work has different components, but it's becoming more and more. Hotspotting. Working out of different locations and not necessarily in what we call the office. We also have our personal and organizational reputation being changed by social media. It used to be 15 minutes of fame, but I think it's now like 2 minutes. You put something out there, we're all here now, something happens, you put it on Instagram or Twitter, and the whole world, not Nigeria, the whole world knows about it. That is shaping your reputation, whether you like it or not. We need to, have that at the back of our mind. There's also the issue of talent shortage. And like I said earlier, Nigeria is a very complex, society. So we have the population. We're over 150 million. How many millions are millennials? How many millions are out of work? Yet we're still struggling to find the skills. So if you put an advert out there now, this is in Lekki, put a job advert and say, oh, we're looking for a young graduate, 28 years old, hasn't worked before. How many CVs do you think we'll get? But how many of them will be quality hires? And that's what makes talent expensive. So it's available, but how much of it is quality? So, because when, the last speaker was talking, he says we need to understand the language of the business and we need to know how to pitch our language. So you may go to your, MDs or your bosses and they tell you, oh, just put an advert out there. There's so many CVs, you will get many. But how many of those CVs or candidates will be quality? And that means that by the time you get that quality, they are coming at what? At a premium. Because they know that there are not that many and that they should be compensated for that value. Okay, I think it's coming back. And the talent that we have now is not just local competition. So you're not competing with your talents with other Nigerian companies. You're competing on a global scale. The latest thing now is that all our engineers, we are used to the doctors going to Saudi, going there and there. Now is our engineers, the tech guys. Where are they going? Australia, Sweden, Germany. That's where they're going. No, Canada is even, they speak English. Let me put it that way. But they are going to Sweden, where they don't even understand the language, okay? But it's to tell you that the competition we're talking about is not even just maybe MTN and Airtel or Cadbury. No, it is Nigeria versus the world. And we are talking about a pool that is what? Shrinking. Don't forget that. The pool is shrinking. Of course, we've all heard about VUCA. I'm not going to go into that, but it just talks essentially about the complexity that surrounds the world as we have it today. In our workforce, we also have multiple generations. And in Nigeria case study, it makes me laugh when I think about that. So all about the millennials, the multi-gen, all of that. And so you find people who know what they want, say what they want, and then you find at the extreme end, the people who want to be addressed as the SARS and the MARS and want the respect. How do you, marry that within the office environment? And finally, perceived value. Now, this is a very important, context when you talk about reward. We have here 4 different types of equity, and I'll run through them quickly. So there's individual equity. Do I feel that I am compensated or I am rewarded for what I am worth? Based on my own perception. We all have a sense of self-worth. So do I feel that I am paid, on that level? There's also internal equity. So we're both sales, agents, and we do the same job. Are we paid, similar? But then if I perform better than him, do I get better pay than he does? Then coming to procedural equity, how you pay, is it fair? So are you paying marketing better than finance in terms of how you make your payments? Your policies, are they fair? Are you paying women more than men or men more than women? And external equity compared to other companies in this industry, are you paying much lower than they are? And so you need to try to get all of this, equity metrics right, because those are all the things that people have to consider when you're trying to develop a reward framework. Oh, I think I'm going backwards. Okay. So this brings me to the total reward framework, and this is not from me. This is by the World at Work Association. You can Google them. They're right up there. They're about the, leading benchmarks on total reward, and they have this. So what I've just tried to do is to explain what, each of these components mean. Now, because of the previous slide where I showed you all of the complexity around total reward, what companies try to do is adopt this model in developing their total reward framework. So on this, you would see two key dimensions of total reward. So you would have financial rewards and non-financial reward, so that you don't consider, because there will be some things you're currently doing and you probably are not able to situate them as a reward element. So under financial rewards, we have compensation. And to the employee, that looks at what is my value today? What am I getting? Again, in our Nigeria of today, it is all about naira and kobo. So for the employee, this is apparently the most important part of the total reward model. And that includes the base pay. So base pay is everything you get every month, however you describe it. And thanks to the, what you call them now, FIRS, it doesn't matter what you divide it as, everything gets taxed. So whether it's basic is 100%, or you have children allowance, or you have what other allowances? Dressing allowance, whatever you call it, everything is taxed. So that part of the pay is what you call the base pay. Then you have the variable pay. What I want you to take away from variable pay is that is the pay at risk. It's not guaranteed. It may or may not come. So those are things that if you do this, then you get paid that. So things like your overtime. If you don't do overtime, you're not going to get it. Now, when we talked about, the equity that you needed to consider in your total reward strategy, part of what you need for variable pay that makes it seem fair and people feel that it is equitable is where you have policies and procedures that spell out and dictate to people what they can or can't get. Because if I don't understand why you're getting another allowance beyond the base pay, and we're doing the same job, I'm not going to think or feel that system is fair. Do you agree? And when I don't think it's fair, I'm not going to value whatever compensation you give me, because it's important that the employee also values what it is that you give them in order for them to feel what? Engaged with the organization. So for the short-term incentive pay, so this is still a type of variable pay in that it's not guaranteed, but it's targeted towards some, target that if you do X, Y, Z at this time, in this manner, you will get this. So things like commissions, bonuses, they come, within this short-term incentive pay. Now, the long-term incentive pay usually has a longer time period. So short-term can be between 3 to 12 months. And then the longer term is more of, maybe like a year and, longer than that. And they're usually about stock options, which looks at the entire value of, the corporate to say, okay, as the company, progresses or improves in value, you also get the reward. So you can see that this whole thing is about what comes to the employee's pocket. And for employees, this is all they see when they talk about their reward. But guess what? There are other parts of the equation, which are the non-financial reward. So you have the benefits. To the employee, they look at their financial security or protection. So things like your pension, things like your medical, they all sit in this box. And what makes this interesting is that some of this are now made statutory. So whether you like it or not, as a company, you do have to offer this elements. Now, when you're offering these elements, most times employees don't see them as part of the compensation. But from a cost to company, in terms of how much does it cost me to have this employee, it is part of that component. And more, we need to get it into employees' mindset that this is what it costs me to have you as my employee. People don't seem to value those things, but we need to bring it to the fore. And they also offer us the opportunity to differentiate our offering. So oftentimes you're not able to increase your pay, right? Beyond what you have as your budget and affordability for the company. But some of these other areas, you're able to differentiate your offering to the employees to say, oh, this is something extra that we do for you. So whilst you're doing that, you need to know two things. There's no point offering something extra if the employees don't connect with it, if they can't put a value to it. So I'm not just going to send you to LBS for a particular course if you don't know what you're going to do in that course. Do you understand? It's very easy when we do our learning and we say, oh, this is your learning program, this is your personal development or individual development program. Does the employee understand what they're supposed to, gain from that, the benefit to them, the cost to the company for going on that course? Because it's coming at a cost. Then we'll look at the performance and recognition. The last speaker gave a very good example of, recognition. It need not be big. And some of the ways in which we can do this now is that most organizations are, offering, what you would call voucher services. So you need not, spend so much. You can have little quizzes, little competitions, and give out vouchers to people which they can redeem. So somewhere like ShopRite, they have vouchers. So you have a little competition, winners get vouchers which they can go redeem. And then, your development opportunities and work life. So again, World at Work has done studies, and what they find is that the non-financial rewards and leadership have the most impact on engagement. So the financial rewards will drive satisfaction. Remember, we discussed that earlier. But the non-financial rewards would drive engagement. Also, that the short-term incentive have the most impact on engagement of all the financial reward pool. So for an organization to drive engagement, they need to drive line manager accountability. So line managers need to take responsibility for employee engagement. It's not a HR thing. Line managers own engagement. Also showing senior management's capability in terms of how they're able to execute strategic objectives. So if you're able to meet some milestones or record some significant achievements, showcase that to employees because you're speaking to that non-financial element of the reward package, making them feel that they're part of something bigger than just the naira and kobo. We need to shift, mindset away from the naira and kobo. And in terms of reward management, I'll spend some time here. So we need to evolve to what I would call a consumer grade experience for reward. And by that, I mean, when you call into any call center, usually there's a personalized feeling about it. They would ask your name, ask your details. They have, it's sort of like a summary of you and what you're asking for. We need to move towards that in terms of reward as well. It's not a one size fits all. In fact, more and more, we need to segment. And by that, I mean segmenting what we offer. So fine, we have leave allowance for everybody, but does everybody want that leave allowance as a lump sum? And the easiest way to ask is to do a survey. Use Survey Pro, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms. How many people would like to receive their allowances monthly, quarterly, annually? The question you need to ask yourself is, does it increase your cost? If they collect the allowance monthly or annually, does it increase your cost? It doesn't. Does it increase their satisfaction? Does it increase their engagement? And everybody has different needs and different, requests. But if you're not able to increase, which I know we all can't, can anybody just wake up and say, oh, we're doubling our staff salaries by 100%? No. But how can we work around what it is that we have? One of the ways, it's not the only option, one of the ways is to personalize the offering that we give. So already, from a tax point of view, you don't lose anything if you're paying everything divided by 12, or you're paying everything every 6 months. Do you lose anything from a tax point of view? No. But if I'm able to give you something that, connects with you, I ask you, when do you want your allowances paid? And I pay it according to those. So from a company perspective, I'm not losing anything because I'm still going to pay you those allowances. From an individual, in terms of the employee perspective, I'm gaining a lot because you're connecting and I'm listening to you. I'm doing exactly what it is that you want at no cost to me. Is that understood? Also, involving employees is important, and that is to understand what they value. So you may be offering a benefit that nobody really wants. So I'll give you an example. At my office, we give rice and oil every end of year. And for us, it was a nightmare in terms of logistics. We have offices everywhere, from Jalingo to Akure, and you're trying to get rice and oil to every other person. And we then, in 1 year, just unilaterally said, no more of this logistics. And I'm talking serious. You have to get the truck, store it in Lagos, then they ship it there because you want it to be centralized and all the works. And so 1 year we just decided, just monetize. How much is the rice? How much is the oil? Credit everybody's accounts. Lo and behold, there was uproar. Nobody liked it. Down from the top to the bottom, everybody, emails and calls. Why this? We don't. And then we did a survey. What exactly is the problem? The issue was that they wanted the particular rice and oil. And so we went back again to say, okay, if you want the rice and oil, it's really a lot of stress for us because we incur additional cost in getting this to you. Can we give you vouchers to go on Jumia and buy anything you want? If you like, buy the rice and oil. If you like, buy shoes. Just take the money and sort it out yourself. And guess what the survey results said? We want the rice and oil. And then we had to do focus group to say, please, what is it about this rice and oil? And it turns out that when they get the rice and oil, it's easy to just take it and give to grandma, give to this, give to that. So when we're giving them the money, they had to go think about how to get the rice. Or they will spend the money and then the rice is still not there. Do you understand? So sometimes we were looking at the hustle and the stress of getting the rice and oil. But to the employees, by asking, and we're still not saving any money, don't forget. But we were causing a lot more demotivation by paying the cash, because for us, that was net. So asking employees, involving, it doesn't cost you much to do those surveys, to find out what is it that they want, because that is what they would value. And in the process of asking, you're also connecting to them as a listening organization. Because at the end of the day, you're still going to offer these things that you've already promised that you will offer. Also measuring, using data and analytics to tailor your reward program. So surveys, questions, what do people want, what do people need, that helps. Then communication is important. You don't do things and people don't know about them. And a lot of people now use what we call the total reward statement. So even on offer letters, and I'll show, an example in terms of even an advert of what the company already is telling you that they offer. Trying to be as transparent as possible to show you these are the things that we offer. So this is an example of a company that I saw, and this is the link to the advert. You can check it out. So they already tell you about the organization. They tell you about themselves and what the job is. But interestingly here, you see the benefits and compensation. So what's this already telling you even before you join the organization? Is this transparent or what? Exactly. So if you are there and you're saying, oh, I'm offering you full medical coverage. Duh, everybody does it. But the question is, what you are offering, does it speak to what the employees want? They also offer lunch and snacks provided daily. It doesn't say whether they have to buy it or the company is giving it for free. But already in your mind, this is, telling you that, okay, I won't really have to worry much about my lunch and my snacks. And I know you have canteens at work. So can you not put in your advert that lunch is available daily? Right? They also have opportunity to work with the brightest minds on the planet and a chance to change the world. So some of these things we are already doing, we offer them, but I think it's time for us to pull them together. And in pulling down together, I just raised some questions here in terms of what you're offering from your total reward package. So are they fit for purpose and do they reinforce the achievement of business goals? Are they internally equitable? So do people feel that, look, what you're getting and what I'm getting, yes, there's some equity there, or that you're favoring XYZ department over that or favoring this person over that person? And then do they meet the needs of different employee groups? Because you would have, different groups at different levels wanting different things. So it's about customization. Are they integrated, coherent, and consistent? Are you rewarding something here and, something else over there? Then when it comes to your policies, are they integrated with your HR strategy? So if your strategy is to attract millennials, but you're rewarding, a different generation, what do you think will happen in that organization? Do they comply with statutory regulations? If you're supposed to have a pension scheme and you don't have one, you can be sure that you're going to be found wanting. And so in final closing remarks, to say that there's a direct correlation between total rewards and the drivers of sustainable engagement. I think several studies have put that. And that employees are expecting a productive, engaging, and enjoyable work experience. There's no denying that. We stay at work for what? How many hours? Conservatively 8 hours, but I'm sure we do sometimes like 10 hours every day. And so you don't want to be there unhappy. You don't want to be there getting a reward that does not speak to your needs. And finally, if you're paying attention to, how total reward can fit into employees' needs, you can drive higher levels of engagement, build deeper employee relationships, and secure a better return on the reward investment. And finally, I would like to leave you with this comment on a focus on the entire employee experience. That is from the minute the employee walks in till the minute that they are leaving. What are those things that you're trying to do to create that rewarding employee experience for the organization? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. We'll give room for questions and answers. So if you have any question you want to ask, please, nice hand up. Please go straight to the question.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, my question is a very simple one. How do you manage multiple expectations? For instance, you said we should ask employees, and you have varying answers, and you're wondering how to balance things up. So in my organization, for instance, we have a lot of young people coming into the building, and we have a no music policy, for instance, because it's a financial services industry, and we want that high level of concentration. We do a lot of investment banking and all. So you don't want someone trading and listening to music at the same time, because the company can lose a lot of money. Okay, so you have people say, I want maybe central music, and some people say, no, I don't want noise. I want my own choice of music and all. So we have that, imbalance situation. So how do we manage such situation?
Any other question?
Okay, so let me respond to that. So first thing is, I think what we need to define is what is it that we will not do. So already in your organization, what you've decided is you need people to concentrate. But then you have a couple of people who would like music. So how about creating a pause area where, you can probably soundproof it. And so if you need to take a break, if you must have music, you can be in that, room for the period that you need that. Now, when I say ask people what they want, you already, as one of the great scholars would say, you begin with the end in mind. So already, even before you begin to ask those questions, you have several options. And so you're asking people to choose. And then you leave room for any other comment that perhaps you didn't think about. Because you also need to be able to respond to what it is that you're asking for. So you don't give options that you're not able to cater to. So for example, if you're going to ask people in that scenario is to say, would you like us to create a pause room for you where, if you do need music or you need to take a break, you can then go in there. And so in the pause room, you can also create even a sleeping pod where people can take a nap, before going back to work. So in asking those questions, you already have those solutions. And so based on the responses that you get, you're then able to offer those solutions. Right?
So if you for someone that plays in the technology space and we have to customize rewards for the tech guy, how do we create a balance so that the other people in maybe finance, HR, legal don't feel excluded? Because definitely IT is a talent that most times you don't stay. So how do we create a balance?
So what are you customizing?
I'm talking about the base pay actually, like the compensation. The benefits can be general, but the compensation.
So for the base pay, because when we're describing base pay is what is like your fixed basic pay. And you usually would tie that to like a job worth hierarchy, which you assess through job evaluation to say, okay, what is the worth of this job? So whether I'm in finance or I'm in marketing, this is the worth of my job. So that's where you do your grading system. So if you're an analyst, I should earn the same as an analyst, whether I'm in marketing or finance. Now, for the tech guys, I do understand, there's a need to have a pay differentiator, possibly for the technical skills that they're bringing to play. An easy and objective way to do that is through the performance management framework, where when they're able to achieve certain milestones, then you're able to pay them, that little bit extra. So using your variable pay, which is not necessarily a guaranteed pay, to say, okay, so if you do A, B, C, D, you will get this. So again, you can look at their retention. So yes, they are a flight risk and they leave, almost like that. So you can say, look, if you stay with me for 6 months, you will get this allowance. Do you understand? Like a retention bonus. You can have things like that. And everybody would understand because they know. They may not like it, but that understanding, that knowledge is important to ensure that your compensation is equitable. So if they understand and know that, oh, this person is going to get 500,000 if they stay for 6 months, that's the policy. What they won't understand is if you're not transparent about that and he's getting the 500,000 in 6 months, the question would be why. But if you state that upfront, that there's a retention bonus for this category of employees for XYZ reason, and this is what you're going to get at so time, then you can pay, that allowance. But transparency is key when, you're implementing total rewards.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Dami. I'd like to ask, how can you get to win the mind of an MD who does not, how do you get to win the mind of an MD to buy into the rewards, into rewards? And it's because he has the mentality of the fact that, they don't stay, so there's no point. Let's just do what we can do and then, But for me, I think that if you do, they will stay. If you don't do, they will still not stay. Sorry, if you do, they will. If they don't want to stay, they won't stay. And if you also don't do, they will still not stay. So, but once the person leaves, they still remember you for what you've done for them. So, how do you get your MD to buy into these ideas, especially because of the fact that he's well exposed? He knows what this thing can do for you. So that's a challenge that I'm trying to sort out now.
Yeah, my name is Ebele. Talking about transparency, I just want to know best practice. Do you publish like the results of the performance appraisal so that when employees are discussing and somebody maybe for bonus payment has a larger one and she says this, I mean, how do they employees actually know that this person really got maybe better score than I did, so that's why she probably got more, something like that. She publish.
Starting with your first question, I think a way to connect with business leaders is to speak their language. And the question I always like asking, where someone says, "Oh, don't train employees. When you train them, they will leave." The question will be, what if you train them and they stay? Right? So if you compensate employees appropriately, if you do your benchmarks, finding out what's your comparator, companies that are similar to you, what do they pay them? Because there is a cost to actually replacing an employee. Sometimes we don't think of that. The recruitment time, the cost, your advert, whatever it is that you're doing to bring that person into play. Even the time when there's a vacancy, someone else is, doing half of one job and half of this vacancy to be able to, get the business going. So there is always a cost to a vacancy or an exit. So it's to explain such scenario to him that, so yes, they come and go, but perhaps if we change things a little, we can have a higher turnover, retention rate. You can also find out from other companies, how long do employees stay relative to your own company. So if people are staying longer, then what is it that they are doing that you're not doing? So sometimes showing the data, showing, the numbers to say, look, in company X, they actually stay on average of 3 months. 3 years. Here, they're staying 18 months. What are we doing differently? And then the cost of the exit to the organization as well. Right? And then for the next, for the other one, I would say that the line managers should take accountability for the feedback of the performance appraisal scores. So yes, a line manager should have full visibility of the people that are reporting to him. For each employee, I would say they have just their own scores. But if the salary increase framework is transparent, and by that I mean it's clear to everyone that the higher your performance, the higher your salary increase. Because it's where such things are not clear. You don't know what is the basis for the salary increase or the basis for the bonus. That's where the whisper starts to come out to say, so what did she do? How did she? What did she? But if it's clear that the higher the performance, the higher the salary increase, and the line manager is also able to communicate to say, oh, this person's performance was so laudable that they're able to, achieve XYZ target. And then open recognition. So rather than focusing on the scores, recognize and celebrate the people that won for those achievements. That also brings transparency. You're not going to hide where somebody brought in a large business or did something really significant. So by the time you are rewarding such a person, there's no whisper. So remember, one of the things I had mentioned was that your reward systems needs to be coherent with the business strategy. So what is that person being, compensated for? It's for doing something positive for the business. So celebrate it. So your reward and the celebration and the recognition are aligned. So people don't see the disconnection and wonder whether there's fairness or, is it because man, no man that this person is getting a higher increase. Does that help? All right, thank you.
Last question. Okay. Come on then.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is we'll take his question and then I'll take you to other back once we finish it. Does that work? All right.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. My name is Tolu. So, in practice, talking about the total reward, we have tried to communicate, total reward, during employment. So where you actually tabulate it and, add it to the employment letter so that, the candidate can see. Okay. So, but we have seen situations where they feel that you're trying to cajole them. They want to ask, okay, which one is the next? Which one will drop at the end of the month and all that, So, I mean, they're not interested in, the non-financial, the variables and all that, which one, how much. And, at the end of the what is like a total cost to the organization. Maybe at the end of the day, maybe 5 million will drop, after tax. In fact, they want to know after tax, and all that. But, while you're trying to communicate, the total reward, maybe it's about 15 million, per annum and all that. But at the end of the day, it's actually like 5 million and all that. So, I mean, how do you, balance that, without the candidates seeing you as, okay, trying to cajole or trying to just, deceive them?
What you're trying to build here is for employees to understand the value you place on them, but also acknowledge, and this is for we as HR, that to the employee, that 5 million, as you've described, is what is most important to them. So what we're trying to do is to push the envelope to say, yes, there's 5. I understand and I agree with you. 5 is what is coming to you. But beyond that, as an organization, 15 is what I am investing in you. That's really what we need to get the employees to understand. Because where we're coming from is that they see the 5 and we're using 15. So what we're trying to do is to close that gap, that the employee begins to understand that it is 15. Now, at that point of entry, they see that. But do we stop at that point of entry? Because if we stop at that point of entry, that is half of the conversation. We need to continue that conversation. So be it mid-year, be it at appraisal, be it at year-end, we come back again. Remember, you're going on this course, it is part of your 15. You just keep that communication going. You're going on team building, it is part of your 15. Until such a time that the employee gets it, that, oh, this is my 15. It's an ongoing conversation. It's not just in Nigeria, it's all over the world. Because what we find is that 5 million is what people see as important. They see it as their value, or as a sense of their value or their self-worth. I am worth 5, as against I am worth 15. And to the company, 15 is what I see when I see an employee. So we need to continue that conversation. It's ongoing. But as HR professionals, we need to keep bringing it to the table. So we don't say, oh, go on leave, go on this or do that, without referencing that 15 as part of your 15. We'll keep on, hammering on that until they get it. But you are not alone. All right?
I think we have 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes. Okay, so.
Now this is fair. Okay, and funny enough, my question is just about the fairness thing. I know you had mentioned this separately because of your presentation. So, what is fair and what is not fair? I'll give a scenario. So you have, at some point in my office, we needed money, and we needed the sales guys, to bring this in. Apart from the commission, we had to have the fact that, so if you bring this and this, you get this. If you bring this and this, you get a trip to Dubai, just to encourage them. And then you have other staff of other departments, the way people will talk. Now, okay, so are they the only one working in the environment? After all, we all, contribute our quota. So to them, it's not fair. And then we took a decision. Okay, since we are talking about money, if you bring, it's open. If you bring this, you get, if you bring that, you get that. And guess what? We discovered that one guy built a business who is in IT. The problem wasn't redeeming this particular promise that we had made, but the guy went there because he didn't want to share anything with anybody because he wanted to take full responsibility of that business. He did not carry along, the business development guy who would, at the presentation, make everything clear. So he brought the business, and from day one of that business, there was problem. Apart from the problem, it meant that, he left his primary responsibility, to attend to another person's responsibility. So what is fair and what is not fair?
Okay. Fairness. So I'll just take on the example you gave. And the first thing I would say is being, transparent about what the rules of the game are. And so that sounded to me like you rushed, to set up, something for the non-sales guys. So I think sometimes taking a pause to say, okay, traditionally the salespeople are more inclined to go get, business for the company, but they don't do that in isolation. They have rules, they have guidelines. I don't know of any salesperson that just goes, there's a process that you undergo, in the sales process, and that's what should be extended to any other person who's, going in that line. So I'm sure you see some competitions, they will tell you terms and conditions apply. That's what needs to be put in place, such that even where a non-salesperson is going to try getting business, he's bounded by those rules. Because at the end of the day, you also want to protect the interest of the business. You don't want, getting some deals that you spend. In fact, the profit you should make from it, you begin to dip inside it up until the cost that you're incurring. So putting guidelines, putting rules in place would ensure the fairness that you're looking for. Because the employee right now is going to feel, look, I went all the way and, I'm not getting the reward. The business itself is wondering, why do we have this kind of deal that is, killing all of us? So nobody is really winning. But if upfront we set out the rules, terms, and conditions to say, oh, this is, what entitles you to win. And, by extension, I also want to say that when you do all of this type of competitions for employees, it does drive engagement. It does drive connection. And the business wins at the end of the day because you're getting, multiple inputs from all across the business. But we really must be transparent and fair about the guidelines. If you do this, you will get this. If you do this, you must sign it here, do this here, and check there. So you don't even create problems for the organization and for yourself. So guidelines, rules, fine.
Thank you very much.